No, we want you to take over.
I can take over.
We want you and Melissa to run this thing. I just want to be the opening, very dry act that everybody wants to get done.
It's dry, all right.
Get that man off the stage. Let's get that woman up there talking about them donuts down there.com.
Hey, are you working on promoting the rodeo?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Free Thursday night.
Yes. That's crazy, isn't it? That Ashley Baptist Association. I just put out a bunch of ads on that thing too, videos from last year's drone footage. So if you hear my voice out there, do not make fun of me.
Joy.
Right. It's supposed to be big this year, though. I'm surprised those guys did that. So if you figure like $15 a head times, I don't know, how many people was at a rodeo? 500 people?
Oh, and I think they can do. I thought
1,000
they
people?
said
4,000 people?
4,500. That's what they'd like to do. It's up to 4,500. That's back in the old days when it used to be jam packed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'd be lucky to get that.
I don't know. You get the word out, it's free.
Yeah. Yeah. Sharing this link for easy access. Good. Hey, Melissa, I shared a couple.
That way it's easy to find.
Go ahead.
No, that way it's easy to find.
I'm gonna mute myself. Let's see.
Well, let's see where we're at. Somebody wants to join the call. I don't know who that is. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Hello, new joiner. I know. I haven't got to speak with Miss Brandy yet. Who's Brandy? Do you know Brandy? Brandy, are you there, Miss Cotterman?
Or maybe I am here. This is my first time joining the meeting, but I'm Brandy Cotterman, and I the director of HR for South Arkansas College. I actually work with Jennifer Schroeder, who works at our college as well.
Oh yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think she had some other plans today, so we're still adding people in. Now, who is the unknown that joined with us? The unknown person.
That's probably me, Sheila.
Oh, Sheila. Good morning, lady.
Good morning. It took me a minute because Teams was quicker and easier for me, and I had to do a whole lot of stuff to get to here. I'm like, whoa.
I know. I don't know whose fault it is, but somebody. I think it's mine. I tell you what, Tanya, I want to blame Tanya. She hadn't taken the blame lately. Let's see here.
Yeah, I hear that.
Couple more minutes. Hey, we are. I'm gonna wait till about another 5 minutes before we let Melissa kick off. But I'm gonna go ahead and bring the meeting to order and just or bring us into session. We have some more callers coming in. While we're waiting, let's see here. Yeah, I've never used this thing either in managing the process. I think I've got to make some changes because it's making me having to click to allow people to add, and that's just too much work.
Well, for a dummy, is there a way to make it full screen?
Yeah, there's a way. There's a way to make it full screen. I don't know. I don't know how to do that.
I'll just keep working on it, see if I can figure it out. Because you're a little bitty, but that's not a bad thing.
That you don't want, the only thing you could probably see on me is the shiny, because I did put some cocoa butter lotion on my head this morning.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. Do you see the there are 3 dots at the bottom in sort of the admin panel? Well, I don't know what you're looking at, but the next to like where the hang up call is, there's the 3 dots where it says more options. And I think there's a full screen option in there.
There is, and then it doesn't go full screen. We'll figure it out.
That's probably the best they have.
Yeah, man, you would think Google could do better than this.
Well, there's also a little arrow at the top that I thought when I clicked it, it would move everything to the left, but it doesn't. It takes me completely out of the meeting. I figured that one out.
I don't see these crazy questions to me. That I do see a way to, when you're presenting, to go full page, but other than that,
We'll do that.
let me see. But now I'm gonna let her. She's gonna take over in just a moment. But let me see what happens if I go to what is this right here? No, that's not it. But now, whenever I do that, what does that do? Nothing. I'm going to tell you this. I'm getting a different experience on my iPhone than on my computer. So on my computer, I can get a full screen, but on the iPhone, it's a little bit different. But it looks like
I was able to get a full screen with the 3 dots that Melissa was talking about.
yeah. Okay. I tell you what, guys, I'm ready to go when you are, Melissa.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thanks.
Brad, did you have anything you wanted to share at the top here?
I think I don't really have a whole lot. No, I think we're ready to go. I think that I mean, other than I do say this, I know that I kind of got distracted over here looking at the screen. It's kind of driving me crazy here, but it's kind of a weird thing. I knew that we needed to do some events, and I saw this Miss Melissa here Forziat. How can you pronounce it? Forziat? That's how I say it. How's that?
Exactly.
I saw it. She sent an email to us, and I think she's been trying to tap into Shrm. And I started looking at some of her presentations and such online, and I was like, you know what? I think this would be great for us because, there's never anything wrong with having an extra little push, an extra little, a little something to get you going. And here's Miss Barbara joining us here. And I like the idea of the donut because I'm kind of fascinated by donuts, and I started looking at what Melissa had out there, and I was like, you know what, she gave us an opportunity to come visit with us and share with what she's learned in her life, and you know what, couldn't resist it. So Melissa, with that being said, I'd like for you to just take over and tell us about your donut situation.
Absolutely wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and get my presentation up on the screen for everybody. Just so you all know, now that I'm full screen, I can't see any of you. So if you need to say something to me, just speak. That way I know that you're trying to communicate. There'll be other ways to communicate through live polling during the presentation so I can actually interact with you. I just wanted you to know that. But I'm so glad to be here today talking to all of you. We're all in different rooms, different places, but we're coming together for this presentation. And, I'm so honored for that. I'm leaving this slide up on screen here for a moment so that you can check out that companion postcard link. That'll be a really fun one to have open as you go through. I also dropped the link in the chat earlier. So if anybody wants to share that again now, that would be absolutely wonderful. And, my name is Melissa. We're going to talk about how to go after what you want today. We're going to do it in the most fun way we possibly can. And, for me, it really all starts with a simple question. What if you spent the rest of your life leaving nothing on the table? I mean, really, what if everything you wanted, you went after? What if every goal you had, you took some sort of action to achieve it? I wonder what that would do for, the next year, the next 3 years, next 5 years. If you lived your whole life this way, what is the potential that you have with all of that? And for me, I was really fortunate that I had this strange thing happen to me early enough in my life that I've been able to approach most of my adult decisions from this place. And I know it's had an impact for me. So I'm hoping today it helps inspire you to move forward with something that is in your mind as well. Now, for all of this, what is Take the Donut all about? Let me tell you the original story about Take the Donut. And to do that, we're going to have to go back in time a little bit to college. So we're stepping back here to Brown University. This is where I went to college. And this campus is a lot like you would think it would look. It's got the beautiful brick and ivy buildings, the gorgeous green quads. There are kids playing Frisbee. It's all the things that you think it would be. But there were some buildings on campus that were a little bit different. So I'm highlighting this one in particular. This one is Marston Hall. You can see it at the top there. This is actually, for those who are interested in architecture, this is an example of American Renaissance architecture. You've got that white facade, the huge archway and those pillars. When you walk into this building, the first room that you get to is this sort of grand foyer. It's this entryway. It's 2 stories in height. There was a fireplace on the side. There was this massive table in the center of the room. It was sort of the first thing that you'd see. And it was very imposing, very powerful. So I was fortunate. I had a class in this building one semester. So I got to go into this building every single week. And I would walk through that entryway and I'd go to my classroom, which was more like a study. It was a small room, had all these bookshelves and old books lining the walls. So the thing that you need to know about Marston Hall is that for me, something happened to me when I walked into this building. For me, I felt like the most sophisticated version of myself when I walked into this particular building. For whatever reason, it just sort of made me feel cooler and a little more mature and older than I was when I was outside this building. And so it was a special place for me to have a class in Marston Hall for a whole semester. Now, there was one day I went into Marston Hall just like any other day. And I walked up those stairs, through those pillars, through that doorway. I got into that main entryway, and on that impressive, imposing table, there was a box of donut. One donut. So I thought, a box of one donut? So I got a little bit closer to it. I looked inside the box. Sure enough, it was a box of donut. So now, because I'm me, all the questions start flooding in. I'm thinking, whose donuts were these? What were they for? Is this one for somebody? Is this meant for somebody? What happened to this donut? Why is this one left alone? Is it poisoned? I'm going through the entire gamut of questions that I could think of. And then now I'm standing in front of this box for so long that I'm thinking, okay, so I'm in college. I start looking around. Is there anybody watching me with a clipboard? Is this some sort of experiment? Is this about greed? If I take this donut, am I a greedy person? I've been standing at this box of donut for so long that it's getting ridiculous now. So finally, I just thought, you know what? This is too much drama. I'm going to walk away from this donut. I'm not taking this donut. I'm not falling for that. I walked away from the donut and I remember having a distinct thought. Who would take that donut? Like, I had not only decided that I was not going to take it, I had decided that nobody would take it. Nobody on earth, after all these questions, would take this donut. So I've made my decision. I walk to the classroom. I'm the first one in the class. I sit down. I've got my books spread out in front of me. And the very next person who enters the classroom is a boy from my class eating the donut. So I look at him and I say, you're eating that donut. I saw that donut and I thought, who would take that donut? And he looks me dead in the eye, takes a big bite out of his donut, and he says, it's funny you thought that. I saw it and I thought, yum, a donut. It was the most obvious thing in the world to him. He obviously did not go through all of those questions that I did. He just took it and started eating it. So I sit back in my chair. He finishes off the rest of his donut, and I watch all of this and I just think, this is a life lesson. And you know, it was, because how many times have I seen this play out in the real world? How many times have you? I mean, it happens a lot where you find out, oh, there was that thing that I left behind and somebody else saw fit to take that opportunity. He took it in that moment, I didn't, and it made me really think about why all that was and how I could change that in the future. So, you know, the question I want to ask you here is, have you ever missed out on an opportunity that you could have had if you just grabbed it? You know, for me, that's what the donut is a symbol of, but I wonder if there's something for you as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put our first live poll question on the screen. And in order to get into this session, let me talk you through that. So you can grab your mobile phone and open up a text message if you have that in front of you. There's also the URL on the screen if you'd prefer to do this on a desktop or another device. But go ahead, open up a text message to the number 37607. The very first message you're going to type in to initiate the session is Melissa F600. It's on screen here, MELISSA F600. If you send that text, you'll get a confirmation message that you are in the session. This will be the only time you have to do that. But now, once you're in, now you can answer this first question on screen. Is there an opportunity that you've missed in the past that you wish you would have grabbed? Could be a donut, could be something else. So if you want to say yes to that, you can go ahead and you can say A, and you can hit send. And that's your response. If you want to say no, you can type B and hit send. If you want to say, can't remember, can text C to that number 37607. And hopefully everybody is getting a chance now to get into the session. And just so you know, any responses that you make in these polls will be anonymous. Hopefully you're already seeing that as this goes through here. But you know, we're just trying to get a sense of how we're doing as a group. Is this an experience that we've had? And you'll notice as the responses start coming in, you'll see it shifting on screen. We're creating this together. So far, more of us have had this experience. Got at least one or two that can't remember if they've had it. But for the most part, we've got something in our minds, something that we've left behind in the past. And look, that could have been you know, for me, very fortunately, that first experience that I had with this was with something that was low stakes. Maybe there was something that was low stakes for you. Maybe there's something that was a lot higher stakes for you, and it's really prominent in your mind. But, you know, this is our chance to see as a group, have we had this experience before? And I'll give you another couple seconds to respond to this if you haven't gotten your response in just yet. But look, I mean, look at this. Most of us have something that connects us to this topic, this feeling of a missed opportunity of some level in your life. You have a symbol of that in your brain. And here's what I would encourage you to do. Whatever it is that you were just thinking of when you responded to this question, let's take this opportunity right now to reframe that moment for you. Now, for me, reframing the donut looked like this. If I sat and thought about that donut and thought, you know, oh, what could have been? What was that donut? What was there filling? You know, oh, I missed that donut. There's no progress in that for me. And I realized that pretty early on. You know, thinking about the donut that I didn't take doesn't help me to move forward. So what I decided to do was to flip that message around and say, take the donut, turn it into a rallying cry, so that the next time I'm standing in front of an opportunity that feels like a moment that I probably would want to take, but maybe there's something stopping me or I'm stopping myself, I'll actually say to myself, take the donut, as a reminder to take some sort of action so that I don't have a missed opportunity that I regret later. So this is a great moment for you to take that thing that you have in your mind and, use it as your rallying cry, flip it around, and know that you're in the future not going to leave an opportunity like that behind. If you don't have one, you can say take the donut. That's something that all of us can use, but it may help if you also use the thing that's in your mind for it too. So, with all of that said, this is something that I was thinking about as I moved into the future decisions of my life and, my adulthood. When things would come up, I would say take the donut to prompt a little bit of action for myself. But if you're going to do that, there are some little donut bites, some little tips that may help you along the way. So we're going to talk about those today. This, however, is a good moment if you go to that digital postcard that I shared the link for earlier. If you want to start documenting your thoughts here, this is a great time to write down for yourself in that first question of the postcard. Is there a donut that you want to take right now? Something that's sitting in front of you that this is your take the donut moment. That's a great opportunity for you to just write down for yourself. Nobody else is going to see that. That postcard is just for you to capture the feelings that you're having as we're going through this today and the thoughts that you're having as we're going through, just to see what you can start doing moving forward. Now, if you do have something in mind that you want to go for, there are some donut bites that may help you get there. So let's start with the very first one. One person may know how to get you the dough nut. Look, if you're here for weird donut expressions you've never heard, you've found the right place today. You've come to the right presentation. So one person may know how to get you the donut. Let me tell you the story about the next donut that I did take after the one that I left on the table. So what you're looking at here, we're still at Brown University. This building is a Pizzatola Sports Center. This is where the gymnastics gym is. I did gymnastics for 18 years of my life. And, once you are a junior in college, which is what I was at the time of this story, you're pretty much looking at retirement coming up very soon. If you're a female gymnast, after you graduate college, there's just not a lot of places to do gymnastics anymore. So one of the things that was happening for me at this point was that I had been doing gymnastics my entire life. It felt like a major part of my identity, and it was about to come to an end in a little over a year. And I was very aware of that. I wasn't sure who I would be when the sport was done. And I don't know if any of you have had this experience where a chapter of your life closed, but it was one that really felt like it defined you. There's this uncertainty about how you move forward from there, about who you are, that you have to sort of redefine everything in order to move forward. So that's where I was at this point. I knew that was very soon for me. That was coming up very soon. It was ahead in just a year. Now, another thing that was happening for me at this time, and this is pretty common to most of the people that I was at school with at that point, was this big question of what am I going to do for the rest of my life? It felt like a question I needed to answer in very broad strokes. I know now that we have chapters in our lives. There's a lot of different decisions in your adulthood if you're lucky enough to live long enough to have all of those chapters happen. And it's not about making one decision that defines everything. It's often about making a lot of little decisions. But at that age, I didn't know that. I didn't really see it that way. And so it was this big question of what am I going to do for the rest of my life that I was trying to tackle. And I didn't have an answer yet. And there was a third thing that was also happening at this point, which was, in addition to academics and athletics, I also had a work study job every semester. So the jobs that I was doing for work study, typically you got a list of possible jobs and you picked one of the ones on the list. And pretty much every job was in some aspect of like food prep, catering prep, working in coffee shops. Everything was sort of in that one industry. And those are fun jobs and I was meeting interesting people, but it also didn't feel like the answer to the question, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? So it didn't feel like it was helping to take the question mark away, but what would take that question mark away? So with all of these huge thoughts swirling around in my head, I thought I really need to find a way to address these. What can I do? So one day I decided to go to the gym a bit early and think. It was a place that I really liked thinking. So I'm going to take you into that world here. Now, what you're looking at on the left is the Brown Gymnastics Gym at that time. Anyway, it's most of the equipment from this view of the room. And then I threw in a picture of me doing a front aerial on beam in my heyday, because this was my world. This was everything. And I was pretty comfortable in this space. So I went there to think about these big questions. And while I was in there, I had this light bulb moment. I remembered that earlier that season, a man had walked into our gym. He had interrupted practice and the whole team huddled around him, and he introduced himself as Mike from sports marketing. And he told us, I'm Mike from sports marketing and I am your team mentor. Now, here's the thing. I think what happened here was that somebody in sports administration said every team should have a mentor, and then every team was assigned a mentor. And that's all anybody knew about the program. So Mike introduced himself, and then he didn't really know what to say next. And we didn't really know what to say next. So he said goodbye. He told us where his office was and he left. And on this day, I was sitting in the gym and I remembered that moment. And I thought, I wonder where Mike is. Let me see if I can find that office he told us about. So I walked down the hallway. I found his office, and there he was sitting in his office. And I knocked on his door. I said, hi, Mike, I'm Melissa from the gymnastics team. I think you're my mentor. And he said, oh, yes, I'm your mentor. Sit down, let me mentor you. And we kind of had that tacit understanding that we were going to figure out what that meant in the room. So I sit down and I unload on him all of these questions that I just asked to you and I shared with you is what I shared with him. But when I got to the part about the work study jobs, things started to shift a little bit. And I said, Mike, do you know if there are any work study jobs somewhere in the sports department? And he said, you know what? I don't know, but I'm going to find that out for you. So after I left his office, Mike actually got on the phone with the work study department and he found out what it would require to create a position in sports marketing. So the next call that I got from Mike, he said, hey, Melissa, I just found out that I could potentially create a position in sports marketing for you for your senior year. Is that something you'd like to do? So what do you think I said? I was thinking, take the donut. And I said, yes, I'm interested. But what does that look like? What does that mean? Here's what it meant. I was working hockey games with my face like up against the glass. I could hear the players talking to each other. I was going into the stands between periods and grabbing fans for on-ice promotions. I was handing out flyers in the cafeteria to make sure all the people that I knew were attending the games that I wanted to attend anyway for fun. I was working lacrosse games. I was working all kinds of different sport events. And I started looking around thinking, wait, this is a job? It was an eye-opener for me. Not only was I now working these events, but there were all these other people working them too. What were their jobs? So I started to find out what jobs they were doing. And I discovered this whole ecosystem that I never had really thought about before. And it occurred to me that when I was done being an athlete, that didn't mean sport had to end if I didn't want it to, because this was a way to continue it. What was really interesting about all of this, for me, of course, this is a story of me sort of opening up my eyes to potential career opportunities, but it was also an opportunity for Mike, because when I walked into his office, he got to take a donut too and add another person to his team. I was just one of 3 people on his team, including Mike. That's a lot of extra support to have when you have such a small department to run all of the sports marketing at a university. So for me and for Mike, this represented a donut taken, and it really illuminated a lot of things for me. Now, the question is, what if you could get what you want by just asking for it? I mean, look, hopefully you've taken that postcard, you wrote down something that you want to go after in your life. What if you could get that by just asking somebody for support? So, support sometimes looks like what Mike did of actually giving me access, but sometimes it's having somebody make an introduction for you, or somebody who can be a bouncing board or a listening ear, or somebody who can give you a piece of advice. Support looks like a lot of different things, but what if you could just ask for it and actually get that support to help you get moving? Now, I know I'm making this sound really easy, but I don't know if you all feel that it is. So let's take our temperature as a group here. And I'm going to ask you this question. Now, this is a word cloud, so I want you to respond with a 1-word answer. This is another text message response. The question is, how do you feel when you ask somebody for help? In that moment when you have a mic that you want to approach and you're thinking about sending that email, or you're thinking about going up to them at an event, or you're thinking about making that phone call, that moment before you do that, you know you're going to ask them for support in some way. How does that actually feel to you when you go out and do that in the real world? So I'm going to throw that question to this group. Again, feel free to grab your cell phone, respond to that number 37607, and let's just see what words come up for us as we think about this. Okay, so nervous is coming up, timid. You'll notice, as with word clouds, if we get more of a response, that word will be larger. So far it looks like nervous is the dominant word that's coming up for us, but whatever you feel, if that doesn't represent what you feel free to put your own word on the screen. Whatever is your feeling in these moments when you're about to ask somebody for help. You know, I make it sound really easy to approach Mike. I don't even remember if it was easy for me to approach Mike. It was just about sort of having this conversation, because in that moment it felt worse not to have the conversation than to have the conversation. So I did approach him, but I very likely felt those nerves because I wasn't really sure how he'd be as a person, how he would handle my questions, how he would treat me, and if he even had answers. There were a lot of unknowns there. So it seems like timid, intimidated, nervous, these are the words that come up for us. And this is like a very unsettling word cloud, isn't it? You know, like, okay, I get it. I'm saying ask somebody for help, but this is how it feels to us when we're thinking about doing that. And so if you are somebody who feels this way, we have to find a way to overcome that in order to get to the thing that we want. But how do we do that? And so that's something I'm really interested to explore today. You know, we're adding insecure to the mix here. I mean, these are hard feelings to move through, and often they're feelings that'll stop us from taking any action at all, but that doesn't do anything for us. And so the question is, how do you get to the other side? I love that somebody here feels optimistic about it, because that means this is probably a strength that you have. You know, this is potentially your superpower. Go out there and ask people for things. But for so many of us, if you don't feel great about having to ask somebody for support, you are clearly not alone. And it's just a question of, how do we get to the other side of that so we can find our way to the donut that we want? So if you haven't had a chance to respond yet, I'm going to ask you to pause, because I'm about to put another word cloud up. That's a very different one. Let's just see how our thoughts change in response to this. How do you feel when you help somebody else? So let's flip this around for a second. Put yourself in Mike's shoes. Imagine that somebody comes to you and says, I really love your support with this thing. Can you answer this question for me? Or can you make this introduction? They ask you for something and you're actually able to provide it. What does that feel like to you when you're in Mike's position instead of my position in this story? What does that feel like when you are in that situation? Oh my goodness, look at these first words that are coming up here. So we've got empowered, fulfilled, accomplished. Those are just the first few words that we're getting on screen. Accomplished is getting bigger. Grateful. What a different feeling there is behind this word cloud, right? I mean, how do you feel when you help somebody else? Fairly good. How do you feel when you're asking for help? Not great. So I wonder, what's the disconnect here in our brains? You know, what if the next time we all had to ask somebody for support, we just remembered that on the other side of that might be a feeling like this for that person? Instead of worrying about the worst possible outcome, what if we remembered, I might be making this person feel accomplished and empowered and fulfilled and grateful by just asking them for support and letting them know that I value them that much. We think of the worst case scenario, but this is maybe the best case scenario. And this is what most of us feel. So it's something to consider. You know, if we start looking at ways to break through that feeling that stops us before we go to make the ask, this is one way to start flipping that around so it can be a little bit easier to make those approaches. Just remember, it might feel like this for the person who you're asking for that support. And don't we want to create a little bit more of that feeling in the world? Now, I'm sure that you heard this story of me in college with Mike, and you're thinking, oh, that's a lovely story, but you can't replicate that, Melissa. No way. Well, I want to let you know that this actually is something that's happened a few different times in my life. I have a long history of creating opportunities that didn't exist professionally and then launching into them. You know, right after I graduated, I actually got a position in Torino, Italy for the 2006 Olympic Winter Games. That was a really interesting journey of sort of just showing up in Italy and eventually getting a job out of it. Vancouver 2010 Olympic Winter Games, I was told they wouldn't be able to hire an American for that position that I was applying for, and then they did. US Olympic Committee, I ended up getting a job in international relations, which is the department I wanted to get a job in. It was created for me, that position, by the way, and it was created because I had probably about a third of the people who worked for the US Olympic Committee at the time helping me get it. It was absolutely a sort of it takes a village situation. Rugby World Cup 2011 in New Zealand. I was actually the first person from outside of New Zealand or Australia who was hired to work that event, which means that I actually pioneered their immigration process, which I don't recommend for the massive majority of you out there. It was a very unsettling process, but it also is, it was a really cool opportunity that I got to have. And then Rio 2016, that was my first summer games. I was on the floor at the gymnastics facility when Simone Biles won her all-around gold. I mean, I created a whole lifetime of opportunities that were nothing until they were something. And so I know that this kind of thing can pay off, this asking people for support, talking to people. Sometimes it's one person and you approach that one person. Maybe you have to send some follow-ups. Sometimes you're not sure exactly who you need to talk to and you build a community of support around you, one person at a time or a whole group of people at once. But it's all about sort of creating that momentum and getting it so that you're not the only person who knows what donut you're trying to take. So as you look at that postcard where you might have written down a goal earlier, take this a step further and ask yourself, is there anybody that I can approach about this? And if there is, my challenge to you is try reaching out to them before the week is out in some way. Just open the conversation or get back in touch with them and see where that can go. You know, there may be more than one person you can reach out to. Just make note of that for yourself because that's the way forward here. Now, of course, there are more donut bites to think about here. So let's look at this one. No to one flavor leaves more room to savor. I'm sure if you've heard that one once, you've heard it 1,000 times, right? No to one flavor leaves more room to savor. You know, sometimes there are donuts we leave on the table on purpose because we know that there's another one coming that's probably better, that maybe is a better fit or more your preference. And that's, you know, a really tough balance to strike in life. So let me tell you about a really important donut that I took after all of those sport jobs were done. So actually, after the 2011 World Cup was done in New Zealand, I was traveling out of New Zealand. I was looking for work. At the time, I was looking for more sports jobs, and they were hard to come by because they were in a lot of countries where they couldn't justify hiring an American when they had locals with work experience in that area. So it was getting challenging to get the next opportunity. And as I was sort of looking for work, I found myself in Seattle. Didn't really intend to stay in Seattle. I was just sort of using it as a stopover. And after a while, I started to realize, ooh, I might be here for a minute. So I should start looking for work in Seattle as well. And that's when I realized that Seattle's kind of an insular city. It was all about who you know and what you've done in Seattle, that I had just gotten there. So I realized I'm going to need to meet a lot of people and start making connections. And I decided I'm going to go to coffee with everybody in Seattle. I'm just going to go to coffee with everybody in the city until I have a job. And so I would sit down with somebody for coffee. I'd say, great, who are 3 other people I can go to coffee with? They'd introduce me. I would sit down with them. I'd say, who are 3 other people? I mean, I would just continue that cycle until I had a job. That was my plan. And one of the things about that plan is that because people are making very active introductions, I felt like I needed to be consistent about what I was talking about with the people who were sort of in one pipeline. And I didn't want them to be confused if they talked to each other. So there was this one day I had a meeting on the calendar to go see a managing director of an arts museum. and his name was Larry. And before I went to this meeting, I looked at the art museum website and I noticed that they actually had a position available for marketing at that very moment. It was an entry-level position. It was like, you know, very first job out of college sort of position. You know, it was basically sending ads to the same newspaper over and over again for the rest of your life. And I thought, okay, well, it's something, but I don't really know if that's the right fit for me at this point. You know, I don't know if I'd want to stay in a position like that for very long. So I'm thinking about all this, but I thought, you know what, just put that away. You haven't even had this meeting with Larry yet. Just go and talk to him. So I did. I went and I talked to Larry, and it turns out Larry was awesome. Larry had all these really interesting ideas for new community events, huge projects that he wanted to get off the ground. And we were just talking peer to peer, throwing out ideas, really building something just in an idea space in that room. And at the end of the conversation, Larry says to me, "So Melissa, there's a position open in marketing if you want to apply for it." And I don't know what possessed me to do this, but I said to him, "You know what, Larry, thank you for that. I noticed that position was open, but if I'm being honest, I don't know if that exact position is the right fit. I feel like there's more I can do for you. And I really want to be on your team and be helpful and be supportive. So, you know, maybe if anything comes open in your events department, that would be great. Or if you ever want to get any of these events that you've been talking about, if you want to get them off the ground, I'd love to take you on as a client." I didn't even know what I had just said. I don't even know how I knew to string those words together in that order. I'd take you on as a client. What business did I have saying that, right? Literally. So he is completely unfazed. He shakes my hand. We part ways. The whole way home, I'm just shaking my head thinking, okay, what did I just do there? I did that thing where I replayed the whole conversation for myself on repeat, just to infuriate myself as much as possible, I guess. And I was thinking, okay, so here's what happened. He said, "Hey, Melissa, why don't you apply for a position that exists and I'll put you on the short list." And then I said, "No, thanks, Larry. How about you create a position that doesn't exist for events that don't exist for a company I don't have? How about that? That's a great idea." I just couldn't believe I had done this. I thought it was the biggest act of self-sabotage I had ever committed. But then 1 week later, just 1 week later, I get an email from Larry and it says, "Hi, Melissa. There's a board member on my board who's also on the board of another foundation that needs a freelance event marketing manager, just like you. Are you still taking clients?" And I thought, this feels like a take the donut moment. So I wrote back, "Yes, Larry, I'm taking clients." And I started negotiating with that client while looking up things like how to start a business, how to get a business license. I didn't know anything about what I had just done to myself, but I negotiated with that client. I looked up what I needed to, and I actually got that client. And it was a big enough client that I could sustain myself on it for that first year while I figured out what it meant to actually run a business. I think about that moment a lot. I can't even imagine what my life would be had I said yes to applying for the marketing position, because I would not have been able to start a business at that point. Maybe ever. Maybe it would have taken me down a completely different road. But now I've been in business for over a dozen years, and that is absolutely what I should have been doing coming out of that meeting with Larry. It just so happens that I strung together the right words in the right order, and that's what we ended up with. But I want to pose this question to you. Is there something in your life you want to set limits on? If I had said yes to the marketing job, I would not have had the bandwidth to start a business. A lot of times there are things in our lives that are taking up our time or our energy. They're taking up our thoughts or our money. And we're doing those things because they're safe, or because we've always done them, or we think we're supposed to. And it's not actually moving you towards the donut that you want. I know I've had that happen for me, and I'm curious if there's something in your life right now that you can think of that occupies that same space. If there's something that you're spending time or energy or money or whatever resources on, that is a thing that you're doing, but may or may not be moving you towards the things that you say that you want in life. So go ahead and pick up your cell phone. And if you have a thought on this, feel free to jump in with this. For, first response we're getting in, that's going to be yes. If you want to say yes, type A, hit send. If you want to say no, type B and hit send. And if it turns out that everybody is saying the same answer, it's just going to stay at 100% that whole time, just so you know. But is there something in your life that you want to set limits on? Is there something that you feel like you're doing because it's the safe thing, or it's a thing you've always done, or you think you're supposed to because you're an adult and you're supposed to do it, but isn't necessarily moving you in the direction that you want to go, or even towards the donut that you've written down for that postcard? So far it seems like a lot of us are feeling that, yes, there is something that you're spending time or energy on, and it might not be moving you forward. And then the question is, what do you do about that, right? Because look, we're all adults here. We're not always in a position where we can just discard something completely, or stop doing something, or stop seeing that person. But what can you do to set a boundary around it so that you have more energy, more time, more resources to put towards the things that you actually want to go after? It's important to recognize these things so that you can say, all right, do I have to still be doing this? If I do, how do I do it so that I have more bandwidth to put towards the things that I actually want to move forward into in my life? So I hope this is something that you'll think about here. If you've recognized something that isn't the right way to spend your time, how can you start setting some limits around that so that you can just reinvest to the thing that you do want to go after? I can't help but think that, saying the right no can lead you to the right yes. Just because a donut is on the table doesn't mean you have to take it. If it's not the right donut for you, you can leave it on the table and go after the ones that you want instead. It's something that I consider very carefully nowadays, because initially it was like I should take every donut. And now I realize, nope, sometimes you have to have a little bit more intention behind what you go after so that you can save room for the donuts that you actually want. Now, having said all of this, there's one more really important donut bite that I want to share with you here. And that is a little something that I call Fry the Imposter. Who's heard of imposter syndrome here? That idea that there's an inner critic, there's a self-critic that you have that's saying things to you that are meant to cause doubt. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You don't deserve to do that. Whatever that critic is saying to you, it doesn't want you moving forward. It doesn't want you taking the donut because it doesn't know for sure that you can do it. It doesn't know what your potential is. It only knows what's possible right now, but that's not where we make our best decisions from, because we can grow as humans, right? So imposter syndrome is a really challenging thing that many people deal with. I know it's been a challenge for me. And I want to tell you one more story about a very important moment that takes me to speaking in front of you right now. So while I was in Seattle having coffee with every human in Seattle, I actually had a coffee that resulted in me becoming a board member for a local nonprofit. Now, of all things, you're not going to believe this. This nonprofit, it was called Ventures, and this nonprofit helped local entrepreneurs, low-income entrepreneurs, to start and grow their businesses. Turns out that ended up being a very helpful thing for me, but at the time that I was talking with them, I didn't know that yet. So I'm now on the board for this nonprofit, and something to know about this nonprofit is that the way they did it, they had a business basics course that every client had to go through. And then after that, those clients would get access to advanced services, microloans, things like that. So one of the classes they could access after the basic class was an advanced marketing class, which was my wheelhouse. And that was an area that I was focusing on in my business now. And so one day, the coach of the advanced marketing class came to me and said, Melissa, so we have this 8-week marketing class, and I would love it if you would co-teach with me for one of the classes. Just come in as a guest presenter. And I said, you know what? Ooh, thank you for that, James. I am honored that you would ask, but I'm not sure what qualifies me to be at the front of a room full of people. to talk about this topic. And he said, hold on a second. This is what you do. You're an expert in this area. You're also a board member. You have clout in this room. Please sleep on it. Just think about it and come back to me. And I said, okay. So I did. I slept on it. I thought about it and I realized, oh, this is probably another one of those take the donut moments, isn't it? So I went back to James and I said, okay, James, let's do it. But let's talk through our plan first, just so I know that I'm creating the right material for this. And we did. We talked about the structure for the class, what he planned to cover. And then I was able to go back. I created my half of the presentation. I practiced it to make sure it ran for the right amount of time. And on the day of, it was a 2-hour workshop. James and I co-presented for that first hour. For the second hour, we went around to all the different tables, all the different entrepreneurs, and helped them work on their businesses. And at the end of 2 hours, James said, okay, everybody, time's up. Time to go home. So I start packing up my things and I watch as a line of people starts to form to talk to me. People who wanted to say thank you. People who wanted to ask me more questions, people who wanted to tell me what specific thing they learned that day that was going to help them. And I just remember watching this line form and thinking, freeze this moment in your brain. Whatever it was that initially made me resist this opportunity because I didn't feel like I could do it, was being disproven or disproved by the people who were lining up in front of me right then. They wanted more. And, you know, one thing to know, I was very lucky. It's not all the time that you get immediate feedback to contradict the voices in your head the way that I did in this situation. Sometimes you do things and it's years before somebody ever acknowledges you, if they ever do. But I've often found that when you're doing something that's important in your world, somebody else is probably noticing whether they're telling you or not. And sometimes you get that feedback later and you realize, ooh, people are paying attention to me. I was fortunate that I got that feedback so clearly and so instantly. And I also realized that I loved the opportunity to speak. I was really happy being at the front of that room. And so that's what my business became. And now I get to do this all the time. And I get to have these moments where people come up to me and say, you know, this thing you said made me think about this. And this is what I'm going to apply moving forward. And I get that feedback all the time. And I'm very lucky that I get it. And it just is a reminder that if I hadn't taken that first opportunity, I might have missed out on all of that feedback in my life, all of those opportunities to impact other people the way that I was hoping to impact them. So think about that donut that you wrote down on your postcard, and what is that voice telling you to try to stop you? Here's a quick technique I want to give you that will help you fight it. It's the I am, I can, I will figure out technique. Whatever that voice in your head is saying, you can predict it because it's coming from you. You can also predict and decide what statement you're going to say to refute it, and you say it over and over and over again until it quiets down. Now, a few ways to start that sentence could be, I am. This is a statement of affirmation. I am a good speaker. Great. Just keep saying that until you really feel it. I can is another way to start it. It's a statement of capability. I will figure out is a third way to start that statement. It's a statement of resourcefulness. Like, I don't know how I'll do it, but I'm going to figure it out. That much I know. So these are 3 ways to start a sentence that you can create your own way to combat that imposter syndrome, that inner critic's voice. And I want to throw this back to you for a moment to see which of these do you all prefer. If you're somebody who likes the I am of it all, go ahead, say A and hit send in a text. If you want to say I can, say B, put that in your text. If you like the I will figure out of it all, go ahead and put C in a text. And let's just see what, we don't need to necessarily have trends here, but I'm curious to see what resonates the most for all of you as you think about this. Now, I can tell you that for me, the I will figure out of it all is kind of my wheelhouse. I know that I will find a way through whatever that may be. It gives me a little time to figure it out. And then have some confidence that I can be that resourceful. Now, we're getting a pretty good balance here. There's a mix of the three, and that's perfect, because the next step from this is for you to take that sentence starter and actually write the sentence. Put it on your postcard. What can you say in response to the thing that you know your inner critic is going to say, to make sure that you're defeating it, that you're challenging it, that you're making it get quiet so that you can start moving forward. We have a pretty good balance here. The I can and the I will figure out is pretty even right now, and I am is just coming in a little bit under that. A lot of times we end up having one that's really dominant in a group, and it's always a different one. So I love that this one is more balanced, and that, you know, we have a mix of different ways that we can talk to ourselves here. But I hope that you'll take this step to that next step and actually decide what you are going to say in the full sentence to defeat the inner critic as they talk to you. Because honestly, your inner critic is a clown. Please don't talk yourself out of your own donut. This is your opportunity to really understand, predict what you're going to say to try to stop yourself, and then also decide what you're going to say to move through that. Again, your inner critic doesn't know what your potential is. It only is interested in keeping you safe, and where you are right now is safe. One quick thing I'll say to you to really show you that I've been doing this as well. You know, every week I do a Take the Donut interview where I ask somebody about opportunity in life, and I publish that to my YouTube channel. And when I started doing this over a year ago, I started by talking to the people that I knew. And then over the holidays, I said, you know what, I should do what I say everybody else should do, and really challenge myself here and put myself out of my comfort zone. I'm going to make a list of 50 people who I don't know, who I think would never say yes to me. And I'm going to ask them to do an interview with me and see what happens. And when, you know, I'd say probably a good 20% of those people have already said yes. You know, on January 2nd, I emailed everybody for the first time, and I've gotten so many amazing opportunities to speak with people since then. That woman at the top, who also actually went to Brown University, she had recently come off of the show Big Brother. She was a beloved house guest she was in a duo that people love, and she just came off the show. I didn't think I'd even be able to reach her. She said yes in a day, and she shared out the content. So it like suddenly blew up and became my biggest video and my biggest interview ever. And all of this from somebody that I thought would say no if I asked them. And it's just been a weekly reminder to me to stretch. Just because you think somebody's going to say no doesn't mean they will say no. And that's something that I have to tell myself. That's one of the reminders that I share with myself. So hopefully if you found something that you can say to yourself, start putting that on repeat in your head until you've defeated the inner critic, so you can move towards the donut that you want. Because really, what if you spent the rest of your life leaving nothing on the table? What would that mean for the rest of your life if you did that? I want to leave you with a few resources. Now, obviously, you've got that postcard that you can keep filling out. But if you want to work on more questions for the donut that you want to take, I've got that top link here. I've shared all of these links with Brad, who hopefully he can share these out separately. But that top link is a whole fillable workbook that you can work through to start answering questions. Now, if your donut is going to take a lot of effort, repeated action over time, it usually takes about 30 days to develop a habit. And if you want to use that habit towards taking your donut, I would encourage you to check out that second link, because there's a 30 days of inspiration email sequence you can sign up for that just keeps pinging you with the reminders to stay inspired and motivated in your process. And then of course, that last link, there's all my interviews are sitting on that link if you ever want to check any of those out. But also, you are a great group to lean on each other as well. And I know that you're all happy to, you know, be asked for support. So go and ask each other for support within this group if you feel like you need that, because this is a group that's happy to give it. But having said all that, it's been such an honor to present for you today. And I hope this inspires you to go out there and take the donut. Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm going to take myself off screen share so I can see you all, but I'm so glad that you were here for this. Thank you.
Well, My goodness gracious, that was great. Hey, I'm going to tell you something, Melissa. I've over my life, I've listened to a lot of motivational things, and I hear those beautiful trends that you like. You know, that having lunch with people is so powerful, and that message of contact by the end of the week, man, that puts a fire in my butt. That I know there's 2 or 3 things I got to do by the end of the week. I'm gonna be quiet though. Rebecca, what you got?
It wasn't nothing. That was a mistake that I hit.
That's awesome. Julie, what you got? I know Julie got something to say. She's got a donut she needs to season right now, huh? No? Uh-oh. We can't hear you. Maybe we don't need to hear her,
You
Melissa.
probably don't. I said I don't share my donuts.
Okay.
Great job, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here. I hope everybody came away with something that they know they want to move towards.
Most certainly. Most certainly. Well, I definitely appreciate your time today. Goodness gracious. Yeah, that there kind of gave a big thought. Now, hey, Melissa, I think that you actually have the ability, you could probably respond to that email to all of us and send that link out. But I can do it if you want to, but you're welcome to, and kind of leave any final messages you want to with the group there. You're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I think I had a meeting invite. I don't know if everybody was a recipient of it, but I can check.
Okay, I tell you what I'll do. I'll help out with that. I'm going to open the door for you to with another message, and you can follow. Perfect. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hey guys, that's all I have. I've got to run off to the next meeting. But again, Melissa Forziat, thank you so very much for spending time with us today. We do appreciate your message, and we wish you the very best out there. Thank you, lady.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.